Welcome to another episode of the Emetophobia-Free podcast, and today we are joined by the lovely Sophie Hinsberger, who is 26, and she's joining us all the way from Holland. Hello, Sophie.
Good morning.
Good morning. Sophie contacted us to jump on the podcast because she felt there was an episode that she would have really liked to have been available when she was going through the programme, and she's got a really clear message about the last little bit. When you are overcoming emetophobia, and I'm 100% over it, you found was very disheartening. Is that the right word?
Sometimes,
Sophie?
yeah.
So when you're watching the testimonials and listening to the podcast of people going, I'm fully over it, you found that disheartening. So having a real good conversation about that last little bit and what it looks like to be emetophobia free, and getting yourself to the point where you think, yes, I am, or even I'm 90% of the way there and I know what to do for the last 10%. So this is why we're here today,
Yes.
So that other people aren't in your position going through the program thinking, I'm just not fully over it yet, which is brilliant. So firstly, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You went through the program with the lovely Lisa, one of our coaches, and I have absolutely no idea about your story. So I think we should start there. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey with emetophobia, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah.
Sound okay?
In general, I finished my studies of sociology last year.
Nice.
And I've been working in both sexual health and as a barista. And
they're a bit of difference, aren't they? A bit contrasting.
Yeah. Nice contrast, though. Yeah. And I started the program with Lisa this year, I think in March. But I started it last year by myself in March also.
Okay, so for context then, because this recording will be watched at various intervals. So we're in October 24. So you started the program with a coach in March 24. Yes. But you started the program yourself in March 23.
Yes, correct.
Fabulous.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have had emetophobia for a very long time, but I never really knew there was a word. I remember as a kid, my brother was sick, like in the middle of a square in town.
Okay.
And I ran off into a store, and I was hiding in the changing rooms.
Bless.
And that's a memory I have that makes it pretty clear that I have been dealing with this for a very, very long time.
How old were you then?
I must have been around 14, maybe 15, I'm not sure.
Okay.
In my teens, early teens, yeah. But I remember another situation where I was 7.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah.
It has been a long time.
Yes. Okay. So that just for a bit of research thrown in there, the research actually suggests that most people develop, the mean age of onset of emetophobia is 11. So most people develop it quite early on, and it progresses into adulthood if there's no intervention put in place. So that adds to that, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. So you were suffering with it early doors and teen years. And how did it affect your life?
Well, at first, when I was in my teens, I was thinking, I'm about to go partying with my friends, and there's going to be people that are drunk, and I'm never going to be able to deal with that. So I was worried, but then it turned out fine. Also, I think because I wasn't really confronted with any situation that had to do with someone being sick or me being sick. The last time I was sick before, I was sick a year ago or 2 years ago even. But the time before that was when I was 6 years old.
Okay.
So I never really got to face it, and that's why I think I felt like it couldn't really affect me.
Yeah.
So I was dealing with it quite well. Yeah. But then every time a situation came up where it would possibly confront me with anything sick related, it would make it worse. And I think there was a time when I thought I was going to be sick, but I wasn't, and I had a panic attack for the first time. And then every time I felt something in my body, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be sick. And I panicked. And I think that's part of the reason why I developed a panic disorder out of that. So it has affected me a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to touch on something you mentioned there. You said I felt like it couldn't affect me. So the last time you were sick was when you were 6, and then you had many years where you weren't.
Yeah.
Did you build a belief for yourself that maybe you couldn't get sick, or that it didn't? Okay, because that's quite common.
Yeah.
That's quite common. And if you think about that, that's a defense mechanism, isn't it? Because you're thinking this thing is absolutely terrifying. So if I build a belief that I can't get sick because, all of this evidence for all these years says that I've not been sick, so maybe I just, I can stop myself or I can't be sick. That makes sense. That adds to your desire for control.
Yeah, and I try to control it at many aspects of it, because I remember my mom wasn't sick as much, and I remember her telling me she was 24 on a holiday skiing, and she got food poisoning, and I think I was 24 too, and I was skiing, and I think I got food poisoning.
Okay.
So then I felt like, okay. Before I reached 24, I was like, I should be fine. But then I tried to check with my mom, like, okay, when were you sick then? And she told me about this, and I felt like I wasn't as untouchable anymore.
Yeah.
So that's all the time, all the way she tried to control it, but it's really like it's fake control.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that just exemplifies beautifully the power of our beliefs, because you can convince yourself, fully, truly believe, I can't be sick, I'm not going to be sick, it just doesn't happen to me. And you'll really believe that. And it is a false sense of security, because it's a bodily function that we need. It's a healthy one. But I think that exemplifies the power of your beliefs and why it's so important, by going through this program, to build a really solid, powerful set of beliefs for yourself, so that you don't fall into that trap of, it's not going to happen to me, so I'm safe, when ultimately it could.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay. So what was the point where you thought, no, this is having too much of an impact on my life now, I need to do something about it, when you bought the manual?
Well, I was struggling with several things. I think this started when I was like 19, 20, but maybe even a bit before.
Right.
I wasn't doing very well, and I sought all sorts of psychological help. And there was just a point where it was taking me over, and I'm not sure if I was fully aware that a lot of it was emetophobia related, but I think I told you when we were like getting to know each other a bit that I started taking medication to deal with all the anxiety and panic attacks that I've been having for so long. And I think the point I realized where I knew I had to do something about the emetophobia was when the medication really helped me a lot. And then I felt like maybe there's this last bit that I could tackle with fixing my emetophobia. So I already tasted a bit of the good life that I could have. I was improving so much and feeling so much better. And then I thought, there is this last bit that it's up to me to face it. And I decided to do it.
Brilliant. Okay, fabulous. So medication, I think we spoke about this earlier, it can be really helpful to get you to a stage where you feel you can tackle it. Because if, you mentioned panic disorder, then if you're at the stage where you are panicking so much a lot of the time, then being able to access a program and to learn and to take information on and to move forward and to, step outside your comfort zone, it can feel inaccessible. But as we know, medication is only ever a temporary fix, isn't it? It's not something that you want to be on forever.
No.
So we're certainly not anti-medication, but we're not pro either in certain situations. And it's really helpful.
Yeah, it's good to not put all your progress into the hands of the medication.
Yes.
But I think Lisa said it to me in a way that helped me a lot. She said, if it gets you stable, then it does, and
Yeah.
it makes you able to work on other things that you
That's
need to
it.
face. So yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, brilliant. So when you started working through the program and you were watching testimonials, even before you started the program, and you're watching testimonials, listening to podcasts where people were saying, I'm 100% over it, or, you know, I was over it in 6 weeks, 3 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever else. Why did you find that disheartening? Talk us through your progress through the program.
I think it started with me being such a perfectionist about
Yes.
going through the manual by myself.
Yes.
I remember
Yes.
emailing Rob, or like the general email for questions, and I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
asking about all sorts of things that really showed that I wasn't really getting the point of the program yet.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
just wanted to not rush through it, but I wanted to do it well. And
Yes.
I think that experience maybe made it more difficult for the second time going in,
Okay.
because I already did a few weeks by myself, so I would never be the client that would finish within 6 to 8 weeks.
Yes.
So I think a big part of it was my perfectionism.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also for many people there might be a part that's, oh, it's too good to be true, and then the
Yes.
black and white
Yes.
comes in,
Yes.
and it's like 6 to 8 weeks. I'm not really fully over it, so it must be too good to be true.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm not fully over it, therefore I'm failing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the black and white thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. So let's just touch on the skepticism then, the too good to be true-ness
Hmm.
of it. What was your thought process around that, and how did you move through it? What was the process of moving through that?
I think there were bits and pieces that were falling into place throughout the program, like several parts of it. And one of them was, I'm a huge fan of the belief walls. I think people going through the program know it.
Yeah.
I was always proving myself that I needed, in my case, it was chewing gum. I was quite, well, I wasn't really addicted. I just thought I needed it to feel
Okay.
good. And when I
Yeah.
felt like anxious or nauseous, I thought it would save me.
Yep.
And I realized that whenever I wouldn't bring it and then just tolerate whatever I was feeling at the moment, it would put a brick into the belief wall of, I can deal with this. I can handle
Yes.
uncomfortable situations.
Yes.
And once I realized that, I was like, oh, okay, so if I change this,
Yep.
then this is the consequence, and it will help my confidence, and it will empower the beliefs that I want to have.
Yes. Yep.
So this was one of the things that clicked for me at some
Yep.
point. And yeah, there were several other moments like that where I was like, oh, so this is what they mean.
Yes. Yes. So what you're talking about there is a shift in beliefs, which I think would make a good podcast in itself, to be honest, is how to challenge a limiting belief. So if you've built a belief for yourself that, you know, chewing gum saves me, chewing gum calms me down, chewing gum relieves nausea, whatever else you'd built for yourself, the process by which to overcome that or challenge that limiting belief is one that takes a bit of time to wrap your head around. But perfectionism and black and white thinking are hurdles when you're challenging
Yeah.
a limiting belief, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because if you're thinking, right, let's just go with the chewing gum example for a minute. If I believe that I have to have chewing gum, okay, and then I think, right, okay, well, I'm going to challenge it. I'm not going to have my chewing gum, and I'm going to tolerate whatever comes along. And then you create nausea, and then you're not able to shift it within the time frame that you've set, you know, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour,
Yeah.
whatever. You know, you set this bar in your head, well, I'll tolerate it for a certain amount of time, but, you know, that time passes, your perfectionism kicks in, okay, your self-esteem's low, you think, well, that hasn't worked, I do need my chewing gum, and then
Yeah.
you slip into your black and white of, well,
Yeah.
I failed, I do need my chewing gum.
Hmm.
So those two thinking styles are really detrimental to overcoming emetophobia.
Yes.
They're not detrimental in other areas of life, but certainly overcoming emetophobia, they are. And once you understand that there is a different way, there's a very grey way of looking at a situation like that, and you have the power to respond to your emotions differently than you've done before, that's a game changer as well, isn't it? Because you sitting there not chewing your chewing gum, feeling anxious and going, okay, well, I can tolerate this. That's you responding more powerfully, changing your thinking styles, managing your emotions differently than you've ever done that before.
Yeah.
Just by managing those beliefs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a key moment as well, isn't it? To be able to go, I'm not stuck. I'm not actually stuck with this response to the emotions. I have influence over these emotions.
Yeah.
And that's, a game changer in itself.
Yeah.
So let's apply that, because we've gone down a little rabbit hole into chewing gum, which is good and helpful, right? But let's apply that to the 6 to 8 week bit. So you were never going to be that client. So automatically you'd kind of labeled yourself as a failure, hadn't you? Because you were thinking, I'm never going to be a 6 to 8 weeker. Mm-hmm. Why, in hindsight, does it not matter that you're never going to be a 6 to 8 week client?
The answer now seems so obvious. It's me getting my life back. It doesn't matter how long it takes.
Right. Yes. Okay. So it is you getting your life back, and the important bit there is exactly how you got your life back, because you did it.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I think this is a really important point. When people go through the program aiming for those 6 to 8 weeks and thinking, right, I'm just going to get through it and, bash it out, they've usually got an unrealistic goal in their mind of what emetophobia-free looks like. Yeah. It's like a black and white light switch. One day I've got emetophobia, one day I haven't got emetophobia. 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that it would feel like that, like waking up and oh, it's gone.
Yes. Yeah. And it's like light switch, bam, one day, the other day not. And that's not the case, is it? So do you want to describe now, for again, with hindsight and with you going through the program, what it feels like to you, where you are at this point now, in terms of overcoming your emetophobia? Because you might be 90%, 95%, 100%, I'm not sure, right? So where are you now, would you say, and how have you got yourself there?
You mean in percentage?
Yeah.
Well, actually this week, I think I've gotten a bit closer. I'm not sure what I would say, maybe 75%.
Okay.
Something like that. Yeah.
Okay. So to put this into a bit of context, Sophie has just come back from traveling. Mm-hmm. Right. So do you want to talk us through your traveling, what that was like in terms of emetophobia? Because that was something that you would have struggled with.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
So I went to walk the Camino. I was away for 3 weeks all by myself. I flew to Portugal, which was something I would have never imagined doing a year ago, even the beginning of this year not. And I remember last year I sometimes went for a walk, but brought all my safety stuff with me, even if I went around the block here. Yeah. And now I just did 280 kilometers. Sometimes I was in the middle of nowhere. I only had my backpack, which wasn't that much, and I felt so free, and it was something I never thought I could do, but it was the absolute best. Yeah, I'm so happy that I got there, and this is also progress, and not everything was always easy, and I had some thoughts that I would rather not have, and there was some moments that I struggled, but it's so worth it. And before I would be like, oh, there was this one night where I responded to feeling unwell and I would have liked to handle it differently, or I was worried about the food sometimes, but I just forgot about that because it was so great. It's nothing compared to everything I experienced on the way. Brilliant. All the good things were so much better. Yeah. Brilliant.
And it will, the more you put yourself in that position of being away from home, eating food that you're unfamiliar with, or in places you're unfamiliar with, the less thoughts you're going to drive, as long as you keep processing the experience.
Yeah.
Powerfully. Yeah. Which you have
I processed it, all of it, very I was very aware of it. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay. So tell us the difference, right? Because this is another perfectionist, black and white, common thinking of an emetophobe. It's, if I'm emetophobia-free, I never have any negative thoughts about sickness. I want to completely eradicate all thoughts about sickness, and I want to be completely fine with it. No effort required. If it happens, it happens, and I'm totally chill with it. We know that's not necessary to be emetophobia-free. If you can compare and contrast almost your response to the thoughts you had when that evening you were talking about, that night I felt a little bit ill and I responded not in the way I would, not ideally, but I did respond and I got through it, compared to feeling nauseous before the program when you were emetophobic. What's the difference now?
Well, the biggest difference is before I would totally panic.
Yes.
I would try to do everything to avoid it. I would make it even worse by panicking.
Yes.
So that's a big difference. And as you said, that emetophobes would like to be emetophobia-free in a way that it won't ever bother them ever again.
Yeah.
But for me, the most helpful thing, it's a sentence, I think Lisa once said it to me: you don't have to like it.
No, you don't.
It doesn't have to be fun. And then I was like, there might be a difference between totally panicking and disliking something.
Yes.
And
yes,
it's not like being very happy about it versus panicking. It's like panicking versus, I'm obviously not happy about it, but it's all right.
Yeah,
I'm dealing with it.
Yep. And that's a really important message. I liken it to, you can liken it to all sorts of things, but there will be, and I'm sure everybody listening to this can think of an area of life that they don't like, that they, create a bit of anxiety around when it rolls around, or they have to coach themselves through it, or they've got to breathe through it, or they've got to do something to manage their emotions in that moment. So it could be something like going to the dentist, flying, being up something high. But the difference between having something you dislike and having a phobia, was emetophobia rules your life. It's 95% of your thoughts, day in, day out. You think about it all of the time. It makes you change your decisions and your behaviors around life. Whereas if you have, I really, really dislike or even hate the dentist, for example, right? I really dislike that, and I have to really manage my thinking around it and really coach myself through it and big myself up before I get there and all of that business. It's unlikely you've got a phobia of the dentist.
Yeah.
Because you don't think about it day in, day out. It's one of those things that I just don't like it. But I can manage, I can get through, I can put a bit of effort in and get through. And that, when you get to that point with sickness, then you haven't got a phobia, because you think, well, I actually don't need to avoid this thing. When it rolls around, I'm not going to like it. Not going to be my favourite day. I'm not going to think, oh, whippy, right? I feel sick or I'm being sick. It's not my favourite thing. But you can build a belief, just like you've got with the dentist, let's say, that I've got the skills to manage that. I don't need to like it. I don't need to love it. I don't need to be anxiety-free even.
No.
But I can get through it. It is temporary. It will pass, and I can manage. And that's emetophobia-free. So I think, if you have this dislike of the dentist, you're going to be walking through life, and every now and again you might see a dentist, or you might have a story about a dentist, or say, oh, I went to the dentist last week, and you might drive a couple of negative thoughts about the dentist. So you might have a thought, oh, God, I hate the dentist, right? I really don't like the dentist. But emetophobes, with their perfectionist lens and their perfectionist thinking styles, don't allow themselves that. What they think is, I've had an unhelpful thought about being sick, therefore I've still got emetophobia. And that's not the case. They've just driven an unhelpful thought about being sick, just like they've driven an unhelpful thought about being the dentist. It's what you do with that unhelpful thought that's the key, really. That's the important bit.
I think it's funny that you say that, because when I said 75%, I think that's part of the last bit. Like, I wouldn't say I'm 100% there, and that's still fine. But maybe I'm also being a bit of a perfectionist about not allowing myself to experience the credits that I should be taking for what I'm already achieving.
Yeah,
Like when you
yeah,
mentioned this, I'm like, actually, I'm doing fine. Like
yeah.
there was someone at work that got sick. I'm not sure what it was, but I was like, okay, so I worked with her, and when, and am I going to see her again, and la la, la. And then I thought, I don't want to control this, so I'm not going to do it. And I had
Brilliant.
the thought,
Yep.
but doesn't really have to mean anything. Like it's okay to have it.
Fabulous. Yes, it is completely okay to have it. I had a similar situation. It wasn't somebody at work. It was my daughter. She goes to toddler classes. She's only 21 months. She goes to a toddler class a day, and the toddler class that she'd been to the previous day, the following day I got a message say the teacher come down with a sickness bug. I was like, okay. So unhelpful thought, you go, there's a chance there that she could have picked that up. You know, she was in that class, there was other children in that class.
Yeah.
That could happen. The difference, it's not, that doesn't mean I still have emetophobia, that I go, oh, that's a shame. Because my husband, who's never had emetophobia, would go, oh, that's a shame. Because he doesn't, you know, it's an unpleasant thing.
It.
Nobody likes it. It's an unpleasant thing. He would prefer to avoid it if he could.
Yeah.
But you gain the skills by going through this program. What you have now is the skills and the ability to go, well, that's an unhelpful thought. I don't need to brood about it. I don't need to control the situation. If it happens, it happens. I'll manage at the time. That's fine. So still having an unhelpful thought about being sick does not mean you still have emetophobia. That's really important.
And I'm not acting on it.
You're not acting on it.
Before I would like to control and ask and maybe avoid going to work. And now I'm like, well, I don't want that. I don't want to have that life.
Nope, absolutely. And that's a really interesting point. So you said that I don't want to have that life. It's a conscious choice, isn't it? It's a conscious choice. When you have the thought, you know, that lady was sick at work, my colleague's been sick, you create the, you know, they drive the unhelpful thought, really don't want that, have I been there? You made a conscious choice, you put effort into going, I don't want to brood about this, I don't want to try and control this situation, so I'm not going to, because that's not the life I want. And that's important, because it is effortful. You know, you still have to put effort in and go, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going down that rabbit hole because I know where that leads. I've been there. That's a emetophobia town, right? I'm not going there.
And it feels like you step one foot into it while thinking about it. So that might mean when you still have black and white thinking, like I do sometimes, it might mean that it feels like, oh, I went there for a bit. Maybe I'm still living there in the emetophobia town, you know, but I'm not. Like I have my house here, and I can just go back in.
And it's, you know, the more you make that choice, the easier it gets.
Yeah.
The more you make the choice of, no, I've got the skills not to go back there, and I'm not going to go back there, the easier that gets, the quicker that process gets, and ultimately, the less thoughts you drive in the first place because you know you can manage them.
Yeah.
When you... I feel like I'm hogging the limelight now and I don't mean to. Do you ever have thoughts that you struggle to manage, or is it a case now where you have the thought and are fully equipped to manage?
Yeah, I think I struggle with some thoughts.
Yeah?
Yeah. And I think most of it is me being very hard on myself when I have one.
Okay.
So it's not the initial thought necessarily, it's the consequence of me analyzing what it means to have it.
Yes. And I think that's it. When you think about taking the pressure off yourself and allowing yourself to have an unhelpful thought, because this is the part of the last 10%, right? So you've got the skills to deal with those thoughts. But if I'm allowing myself the grace, the freedom, the space to have an unhelpful thought, that lady at work's been sick, toddler class, there's a sickness bug going around, created an unhelpful thought, but not judging myself for having it, not seeing it as a failure, not worrying about it, not trying to solve the problem, because we know emetophobes are lovely problem solvers. Okay, they're very intelligent people, very driven people. We like to try and think our way out of a problem. But an unhelpful thought isn't a problem in itself. It's just an unhelpful thought.
Yeah.
What you do with that thought, that's where you want to be put in your energy and your effort. If I've had an unhelpful thought, it's just an unhelpful thought. I don't need to berate myself for that. I don't need to try and fix it, try and work out where it's come from or why I've had it.
Yeah.
It's just an unhelpful thought.
Yeah, and that's why I think I know it's about the perfectionism and the black and white thinking. And I was thinking before, maybe it's the brooding part where I like ruminate about what could happen and go down spiraling about, oh my God, maybe it will be like this. But I think most part is me judging myself for sometimes having that.
Yes.
Yeah. I have when I started with Lisa, I'm not sure if it's with every coach, but I made a vision board with all things that I would like to be doing when I am emetophobia-free.
Nice.
And actually, I never thought I would finish it within a year, but I did everything. And there were small things like public transport or just walking around without worrying that I would panic or whatever, but also the plane ride and the Camino I did. And I wanted to remove it from my wall, but then I thought, no, because I don't want to feel like this is normal. Like this is a big thing for me.
It's a huge thing.
My perfectionism says, oh, so now you can do it. So it's normal now. There's next, like what's next?
Yes.
But I don't want to forget about the fact that this is such a big deal for me. And it's a lot, and I recognize that that's what I would like to do, but I'm just trying not to.
Brilliant. Do you know, I overcame it, I think we're coming up 8 years ago now, and there's still times now, even now, that I consciously put effort in to feel grateful to my past self for putting in the effort to create the life that I've got now. And I think that's so important, and I'll never stop doing that. You know, sometimes there could be a really small thing. For example, my husband offered me a bag of sweets that he'd been eating, those jelly ones with the sugar on that are sour. Lovely. Right, so he'd opened them, he'd been eating them, and he went, do you want some? Now, past self would have gone, absolutely not. You've had your hands in those, and I don't know if you've washed them or not, so definitely not. And I didn't think. I was like, oh yeah, jelly sweets, and off I went. And I stopped at that moment. I didn't make a song and dance about it. In my head, I just went, yes. Well done you. That's awesome. It's awesome that you can do that. Well done you. And thank you, past self, for getting yourself to here, because this is the life I want to be living. I want to be living
the life we want.
This is the life I want. And I think, you know, you should never stop being grateful. You should never stop looking at what you can do now compared to what you used to be able to do, and being super proud of yourself, because ultimately it's going to boost your self-esteem. And you know, high self-esteem is really useful in thriving. That's what you know, it's a key component. You need to feel like you are, you know, a brilliant person just because you are. You know, you don't need to achieve massive things. I mean, you have achieved massive things, but you don't need to. You need to make sure that you are giving yourself credit for the little things in life, and continue to do that at whatever stage you are in overcoming your emetophobia.
Yeah, and that's why I love the tools that the manual gives me. For example, the positives list, going over it. And I'm not sure if it was in there, but I put like I made something where I could sometimes the language thing is difficult. I just got a piece of paper with a nice background, and I bought like labeling stickers, and every time I did something small or big or whatever, I wrote it down, I put it on the wall, and they're still in my room.
Perfect.
And it really helped me to boost my self-esteem and to realize, like, also that was one of the big things that helped me through the program, the processing. If you don't process it, it's not going to really affect you. And I didn't realize that until I started doing the lists and the stickers all over my wall. And I was like, oh, okay, so this is how this works. Because you can think like, well done, Sophie. But if you don't really show it to yourself, then it can still be like, processing was the big word in my progress.
Yeah, definitely. So for people who are watching this who might not understand what processing means, Do you want to give an example, like when you got back from your trip, or even at a certain point on your trip, you were processing something that you'd achieved? What does that look like?
Well, if maybe this is very relatable, there were like pilgrims menus,
Okay.
and I wouldn't really know what it was, but in Portugal it was mostly something with fish, and
Yeah.
it would scare me a bit, but it was very cheap, and I was just like, I'm gonna order this and I'm gonna eat it, and even if it would make me sick, like, I'm just gonna have this. And processing this means that you eat it and then you process that you did, and you give yourself credit for it, and you're like, okay, I did this and I did it well, and I can be proud of myself. Like,
Yeah.
it's not just doing it, it's also realizing that you did it.
Yes. And the question, or the question that I ask people to ask themselves, is what I'm trying to say, is what does it say about me? So,
Yeah.
I've ordered, I'm away from home, I've ordered a pilgrim's menu, I don't know what's on it, it's probably fish, I'm going to eat it because I know I'll cope. What does that say about me? Well, that says a whole host of stuff about you.
Yeah.
That's so much stuff. You
Yeah.
can step outside your comfort zone, you can do things you previously thought you couldn't do, you can tolerate a bit of anxiety, you can tolerate and manage unhelpful thoughts because you had
Yeah.
unhelpful thoughts at that point. There's a wealth of stuff that it says about you, and that's processing it because you're going, so this is showing me all of these amazing things about myself. And what you're doing there is building a belief system for yourself. You're going,
Yeah.
I can do things outside my comfort
And
zone.
it's not just emetophobia related, it was
No.
also, because that's what you will see when you have to do the exercise of the list.
Yes.
It's also about, I was cat sitting for a friend, that's very nice of me, or
Yes.
I gave a free coffee to the postman.
Yes.
That's very kind. Like,
Yes.
I waved at someone across the street. Like, it's very small things, but
yes,
believing in yourself is such an important part, I think. Yeah.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. So I'm just going to go back to something that you mentioned. You had a vision board, and you were able to tick everything off that vision board within a year, right? I don't know if you have ever been in, because obviously I don't know your story, right? I wasn't your coach. Have you ever been in any of the Facebook groups for like support emetophobia groups?
No, and you know why? I was afraid that it would confront me with like a situation that would cause me to want to apply more control. Like, if someone would ever say, I'm not going to ever eat this again because it once made me sick, I just didn't want to know it. So that's why.
Right. And that is the perfect reason why I'm bringing it up, because people who are in those groups, sometimes it feels like, I found my people, I'm understood. Finally, for the first time, no one else understands it, and these people get me. But the downside of those groups is exactly that. You pick up safety-seeking behaviours, you pick up new limiting beliefs, and you get yourself deeper and deeper into emetophobia. But either way, if you're listening to this and you are in those groups, or you have been in those groups, let's pretend for a moment that Sophie has just written in, okay, I worked through the Emetophobia-Free manual. At the beginning, I wasn't able to do X, Y, and Z, and I created a mood board. And within a year, I was traveling, I was eating off a menu that I didn't know what was on it. It was fish. I'm able to do this, I'm able to do that. If you had wrote that in that Facebook group, you probably would have been kicked out because they would go, you do not belong here. If you can do that, you do not have emetophobia.
Yes, probably.
Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so.
Right? So you go, because emetophobes really struggle with all of that stuff, and you're able to do it. So the last 10%, it's coming to that realization that it doesn't have to be perfect. I don't have to eradicate all of these unhelpful thoughts about being sick. I'm living the life I want to live. I'm doing all of the things I'd stop myself doing. This isn't a phobia. This is a dislike. I just really don't like it. That's completely different to a phobia. So you've come a huge distance in your progress. And yes, you might still have things that you want to, fine tune and tweak and whatever else. Just make sure your perfectionism isn't blocking you from doing that. Because I think you'd get banned from the group. I'm not going to lie to you, Sophie.
It's a great way to see it. Yeah. I would love to be banned from that group.
Yeah. Should be a goal of everybody's. I'm being banned. That's amazing. Okay, so is there any key message or anything that you wanted to get across in this podcast? Because you've given up your time this morning, and we are incredibly grateful to you for doing that. But is there anything that you've got left that you want to say, or any message you want to get across, or anything that we've not covered yet?
I could say so much, but I think one, that it's totally worth it.
Yeah.
And the second thing, every small step is a step.
Yeah.
And yeah, I am so proud of what I have achieved, and I wish that everyone going through the program at whatever point can be proud of themselves, even like ordering the manual. And it's might not be easy, and it might bring up stuff that you didn't even know was there, not like trauma stuff, but like behavioral patterns and
beliefs.
things. Yeah, beliefs.
Yes.
But oh my God, it's given me so much. I'm so very, very grateful that it's out there, and yeah, it's the best decision I ever made. Fabulous. To do this.
Lovely. So, will you keep in touch? Will you keep in touch with myself and with us? So
yeah, of course.
75% reflecting on the conversation today and moving through the rest of your life. Will you come back when you are at? Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, of course.
That would be amazing.
Yeah,
I would love that, because I think that would be important to those people watching me. Like, well, she's doing all of these things, but she only feels 75%. It would be great to get your thoughts on when the final hurdle was achieved and what that looked like.
I have it tattooed on my arm. I can show you. Maybe it's a bit weird from this angle, but it's not really like. But this is like. If you can see,
yes, I can. It's a heart with flames. Nice.
And it's like there is this flame in my heart. Maybe it sounds a bit cheesy, but I feel like I have to follow it, and I'm not going to give up on it. And I know it's within me, and
yes,
I'm just never gonna let it go, and I'm never also not gonna let go of not striving towards perfection, but still, I'm not gonna give up my emetophobia-free journey. It's just fabulous. I'm not gonna give up on the life that I wish to have for myself.
Yes, definitely, because you're doing everything now, but you might be doing it with slightly more anxiety than you'd like. So continuing to do it and process it and manage your thoughts over time, that anxiety is going to reduce and reduce and reduce. The thoughts are going to reduce. So yeah, it's keeping going. I think the final thing I want to say on this is you've got to see, for anybody listening again, you see this program as a journey and a skill set that you're picking up. So it's not a flip switch. It's not a race. It's not a black and white thing. It's a skill set that you have for the rest of your life that you can then apply to every area of life. It's not just emetophobia. When you
exactly.
When you know how to manage your emotions and you can respond to discomfort in a powerful way, that impacts your relationships, that impacts your work, that impacts your hobbies, that impacts traveling, that impacts everything.
Yeah.
And it's such a powerful tool to have. Yeah. And it's one that you will continue to use. And it's a choice. It's a conscious choice, as you've just said. There will be difficult things in life that you've got to just rein yourself back in and go, right, so I know my old self would go down this route and I'd catastrophize it. But I'm not going to do that because that's not the life I want. That's you still, however many years on, applying that skill set. You never lose it. You've always got it.
Yeah.
So it's just continuing to move through that and to make it work for yourself.
Yeah, and I think it's even... This podcast is, I think, a lovely example of still some perfectionist black and white thinking.
Yeah.
But then when I do like helicopter view with you right now and look down on myself, I'm like, I shouldn't be this hard on myself. Like maybe I'm like 85% there. It's not.
Yeah.
And that shows that that's like the tiny bit of work I might still have to do, but it's not about the facing the situations I'm afraid of. It's about judging myself.
Absolutely.
And giving myself the right credit for it.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes the last final bit of work is to understand that there's no judgment needed at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, being able to do the thing, I don't need to go back and analyze my performance, whether I did it amazingly well or not so well. I don't need to analyze it. I don't need to
Yeah.
go into it. I'm good enough as I am. This is good enough
Yeah.
and this is fine. And sometimes that's the last bit of work,
Mm-hmm.
because people without a perfectionist thinking style, they don't tend to do that. Even when they respond to something that they could have responded better, or they create a bit of anxiety in a situation or a bit of stress in a situation, very rarely does someone without a perfectionist thinking style go back and go, right, could have done that better.
Mm-hmm.
Should have nipped that thought in the bud quicker. I shouldn't have responded like that. Or maybe I should have done that. That's a perfectionist thinking trait. That
Yeah.
person without perfectionist thinking trait would go, whew, that's put some work in there. Brilliant, got through it. And they'd carry on
Yeah.
with their day. They
Yeah.
wouldn't have to dig into it. They wouldn't analyze their performance.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's the last little bit.
Yeah. I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Fabulous. So thank you once again. What a fabulous podcast and a really important message for people who are working hard to get themselves emetophobia-free.
Yeah, I'm happy to spread the word.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And please do let us know when you think, I've nailed it. I've got rid of this black and white. I've got rid of the perfectionism, and I'm back. And you can, give us an update on that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, thank you so much, Sophie. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you.
Likewise.
And I will talk to you soon.